Before we get started, I'd like to just thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us today. My name is Angela Eberle, and I'm a solutions architect here at Idera. Before we get started, I just wanted to take care of a few housekeeping items. You guys are all currently in listen-only mode. We do encourage you to ask questions by using the questions panel in your GoToWebinar controls. And my teammate John here will be helping me out and trying to keep up and answer some of the questions as they come in. And then we'll also allow some time at the end as well. Today's session is titled From Data to Decisions, Building Trusted Data Products. We'll be discussing why so many organizations struggle to trust their data, what makes a data product truly trustworthy, and how we at ER Studio with our Enterprise Edition and web portal Team Server Core in combination with some data governance can work together to create a consistent foundation for analytics, governance, and better business decisions. We'll wrap up with a live demo following a data product from the initial business request through design, governance, and delivery. And with that, we'll go ahead and get started. Here you'll see the enterprise semantic backbone diagram, as we like to call it. We like to think of the enterprise logical data model as that over-encompassing shared understanding of the business, is that organizational, understanding of the business. What is a data, every data product, glossary, term, governance policy, dashboard should trace back to that common definition of meaning. Without that semantic backbone, every project creates their own version of what a customer is, what a product is, what revenue or commissions are. The result ends up in inconsistency and lack of trust in the reporting and such. The enterprise logical data model provides that foundation that allows business meaning to be defined once and realized many times across the organization. And AI has really brought this out with that lack of common meaning among your, among the information that you're putting out. So how do we operationalize that vision? Easy for me to say this morning. With ER Studio, it's based, Enterprise Edition comes with three core components. This is the data architect tool. This is where the modelers and architects work and live, doing the logical and physical and conceptual modeling, building that data knowledge by reverse engineering existing source systems, compare and merge to keep things and change management under control. Then we have the repository, which is where everything is shared and handles your version control, your model sharing, check in, check out, those type processes. And then we have our web portal, Team Server Core. This is where you can share those models and those visions that's been created with your broader teammates, like the business analysts, your data storage, finance, and HR, without needing access to the modeling tool. They have access to the glossary and can collaborate on definitions in plain language. This is, like I said, all of the folks from software engineers all the way down to your data owners and business analysts can consume the information from here. And then we also have purpose-built data governance with Purview and Collibra. So we have integration with those two governance tools at the moment, with more on the roadmap. So today we're talking about the data trust challenge. And, sales has asked, what was the commissions for last quarter? Well, then you have 3 departments respond and you get 3 different numbers. The interesting thing is all 3 answers might be accurate. The problem isn't with the bad data. The problem is with the different definitions and how you come up with that number. what makes a data product trusted, shared definitions, business ownership, governed models, connected metadata, and discoverability. A data product isn't simply a table, report, or a dashboard. It's a governed business asset that consumers can trust and reuse. So where does that trust come from, you might ask? Well, this is a very busy diagram, I know, but it kind of goes into the whole story of a trusted data product lifecycle. You're seeing here a collection of data sets. It's a framework of how organizations move from business meaning here at the glossary level to the trusted business outcomes at the data product assets. At the top, you've got the business glossaries where your common language, business language lives, the terms of what is a customer, what is revenue, what is commissions, what is an employee. All of those are defined and agreed upon across the organization and can be reused to create the data product contracts and such. They become the foundation of those data products. So once we understand the business need, we can create that data product contract. So in ER Studio plays a central role with this and the logical data model. So your data contract is that logical data model, and then you can take and relate these to the different business rules, glossaries, and terms, and so forth. And then that creates those shared understandings across your business stakeholders. And regardless of how this data product is rendered, you have that same agreed upon definition of things. And then finally, your data product asset that you create may be a warehouse, it might be an API, it might be semantic models for Power BI. A lot of those things, the technical implementations are derived from that contract and that business meaning. So if you flow from top to bottom, the business meaning drives the data product, not the source systems and so forth. And this, helps ensure consistency through the entire life cycle. Now, the business has identified a need. They want to understand commissions paid to employees. So you gather those requirements here. The next step would be building out and documenting that business requirements and so forth, and that logical model, building out the representation of that data product from the business meaning and so forth. Then you would add your naming standards, maybe some retention rules and other things around that, and create that physical model. Once everything's been agreed upon, you can transform into those physical implementation, and then models ensure that that business intent survives the journey from requirements to implementation here. Now, imagine this isn't your first data product that you've built. The organization already has some governed definitions around orders, commissions, employees, that type of information. And instead of redefining these concepts, we can reuse these concepts here when building out and gathering the requirements in that logical model. And this is where the trust can scale through reuse. The fastest way, in my experience from doing this years ago, is you lose the trust when you redefine the same business concept in every project, because that definition gets skewed, kind of like, when people witness an activity or, an accident or something, you're going to get different interpretations of that accident. Same applies here. You get that drift away from the actual true meaning of what the data product was supposed to be. So here we have that enterprise conceptual model, which gives you that high level idea of, the type of information you're wanting to gather. And then you can build out that logical model, which, can be agreed upon by the organization. And then the data products can be reused everywhere. You define it once and then reuse it everywhere. So you have those mappings here that kind of tie everything together, so you can see that upstream, downstream connectivity when you're looking for where something lives. Now that we've got those trusted enterprise definitions, we need to make them discoverable. So you have that business glossary here on the left. So you're trying to build that employee sales commission data product. How do I know where this data exists? This catalog here, the business glossary, allows you to be able to search for those business terms and definitions and possibly be able to see if it is mapped to existing models and data products and so forth. So this then allows that information to be discoverable, and you can go and find these things and be able to create your projects by reusing some of these things across there. So it doesn't matter what that physical end result is, whether it's for a relational database, an Inman style star schema, a COTS relational database, or an API asset with a JSON file. You can still have that shared meaning across without having to recreate the definition or recreate the wheel, so to speak, saving time and continuing with the trust. And so here we go. With the final slide here before we jump into the demo, we have our Lakehouse medallion architecture example. So over here on the right, you have your data product contract. And as I stated before, it's tied into the glossary here, some of these, the enterprise logical model or the ELDM, so you can assign those meanings. And then it follows across into that star schema at the end. So it doesn't matter how many times, the contract is delivered. The contract stays consistent, even if it changes here as the projects differ. So the warehouse is driven by the business contract, not by the source systems. And so you're not modeling what a source system looks like. We're modeling what the business needs here at the end. And we've spent the last several minutes discussing trusted data products and what makes them trustworthy. So now we're going to take a look into the actual demo and see how it works. I'm going to start in Purview today, and we have a data product here, and someone, the data product owner, Tim, he has requested that commission report we were just discussing. He wants to know, the commission payment value, sales totals, and so forth for the year. And so with that, what I would do first is I would pop into Team Server here, and this is our web portal, Team Server Core. I'm going to go under the business terms and look for commission payment. And you'll see it comes back with a couple of values tied to the human resource glossary. This one here says the amount of commission paid to an employee. So that looks more like what I'm after. So I'm going to pop in here. And you'll notice that within this business term, you can see the name, who owns the glossary. You can get the definition. You can see some security information. So all of this is outlined within Team Server Core. You can also open this in Collibra and or Purview. So this is part of our purpose-built integration to keep those governance terms in sync, depending on which one is your primary. We have that ability to bi-directional information. But I'm going to see if it's related to any models that we may have out there or data products out there in our system at the moment. So I'll click on these related data objects, and I can see here that this business term is actually related to 4 different models. I'm not sure what they entail, but here's that ELDM, the enterprise level logical model that I was looking for. So I can expand on that. and see that it's part of that model. So maybe I want to go have a look at this model in ER Studio. So what I can do is come here. I'm going to have a look at it. Here's that corporate logical data model. And we're after sales and commission information. So I'm going to take a look at the sales model here. And you can see that the model is there. We'll zoom in a little bit so you guys can see better. I'm not sure how this is going size-wise with GoToWebinar. So here you can see the different information. We have order information, we have commission, we have employee data here. So it looks like it contains everything we might need to build out this commission data product. So our next step would be to open up ER Studio. And here is our ER Studio 21 version. Pretty good user-friendly UI. Now what I would normally do is go ahead into the repository and get that diagram out. But for time's sake, I already have that diagram open and checked out from the repository. You'll notice these green locks here mean that it is checked out and I can edit or use it however I need to. So we have our logical model here. You can see the main model. It has a little bit of all of product management, human resources, and so forth. So if we jump into the sales model, it's the one I was looking at in the web portal. We see the key pieces of information we need. And before I jump into creating that data product, I just want to point out here on the left, you'll see that main model was the over-encompassing model, but these other folders here are the submodels. So you can make changes here in these submodels and it will be reflected in the main model. And then as well, these color-coded diagrams for the different business processes, these are called our business data objects. It allows you to create those high-level subject matter topics and then show that to management or what you might need, but then allow you to see the details within that business process by expanding it. These are some key things that differentiators for us as a product. So now we've seen this, and I would typically go and do File New, create a blank diagram, and use our Compare and Merge utility to bring in the assets that I need. But for time's sake today, I've already pre-created this model. We have our HR data products, employee commissions model, and here's that logical model that I pulled in from the corporate logical data model here. I pulled in the attributes and the entities that I needed. And then from here, I generated the star schema, our dimensional model, using the compare and merge utility there again to create the fact table rather, and then the dimensions around that information that you can now share out back into Purview and Team Server, as well as in just a minute, I'll show you our new macro that we're doing that'll create the semantic file that you can pull into Power BI. So now that we've created this data product, we can check that back into the repository. So do that here. Check this in. And just put a reason here, because we do track the changes and such that occur within the tool and the model shared in the repository. And it will check in if there's any changes to let you select what you're wanting to do. And now that we've had this checked in, we can come back out to Team Server here. And if we go back out into the tools and we look at this commission data product, here you'll see that dimensional model that we've created. And then as well, go back into Purview, and you can see that it is now related to that logical model that we shared into Team Server Core. So we enhance the Purview information and provide extra data around that from a logical model perspective, because Purview will scan your physical assets, but doesn't really create logical assets. So we can expand on that information within Purview. And then if we jump back in, maybe you're wanting to provide this information out to Power BI for a report. We can then run this macro here. And it lets me pick which model that I'm wanting to, export out into that file. You can pick your data dictionary that you're wanting to use. You have your choices. And then I'm going to pick the TMDL file. Power BI project. And it created that into 5 tables and 4 relationships. And then we can come into Power BI and open this file, which I already pre-opened, but you can now see that this model is here, and you can establish your connections into the data sources that are feeding that and be able to then use that to create your reports and such. So, being able to provide that business meaning across your enterprise data model or data ecosystem is really important, especially today with people exposing everything to AI. So in summary today, from data product to decision with no loss of meaning, your requirements become your logical data contract. Your enterprise definitions drive every design. Data is cataloged and governed. Warehouses are built from business meaning, and BI and AI can consume the same trusted semantics. One definition, one contract, trusted decisions. Your trusted data products are not created by governance alone. They're created when the meaning is designed once and carried consistently through from requirements through to your AI and analytics. And with that, I was going to leave time for questions. I'm not sure, John, if there's been any questions or anything that I need to answer or show further.
Our audience has been very, very quiet and very shy today, actually. So I'd encourage them, if you've got questions, just to type those into the chat window now. And one thing I would say is I think that that little export at the end to things like Power BI is really, really cool. I know that when I'm talking to customers, we get a lot of questions around how they can integrate into systems like that, how they can kind of take some of the definitions from their logical models and then kind of feed them into the Power BI environment. So I think you showed that really, really clearly there, that it just comes from your studio, the macro generates it, and then up it pops into Power BI. So really cool.
Yeah, and it also allowed you to create the YAML file as well. So for other tools that require those, we have gotten a lot of requests for that functionality. So our dev team's been working really hard to get some of these enhancements out.
So we have just got one question come in. I don't know if you can see the question pane, Angela, but I can quickly read it as well. It says, can you show how the definition from the business glossary is realized in the PBI semantic model? So I guess that's a Power BI semantic model. I'm not sure if that's something we can do today, but
if the definitions are part of the model itself, so here in ER Studio, if there are definitions within, let's just say, employee table here. Check this out. Check that back in. Here, under the columns, there's also definition tab here at the entity level. So if there's a definition here, it should be reflected in the model in Power BI, but then at the column level, if you have a definition, that would show as well. It should bring over those definitions and such. Let me see if it did. There's a dim employee. I'm new to the Power BI, this new Power BI front. So there was a definition in here, and it should show. I just have to remember how to get that to you. So here it would show up if I had brought it over. It would show here.
So I think the question was also asking about kind of business glossary and business terms. I'm not sure how we would do that actually, because obviously the macro is working with the model, and I don't know how. I must admit my knowledge here is a little bit scarce. I don't know how Power BI would be able to access the business glossary either from Purview or from EO Studio directly. So I don't know if you've got thoughts on that, or if that's something we can take away and have a think about.
Yeah, I'll take that as a takeaway from that standpoint. I know how we get the business terms into the model, obviously. When you're in that logical model here, when we open up employee, we have that glossary tab, and that is connected into Team Server. And those business terms that are in Team Server, whether they come from Team Server, Purview, or Collibra, you can relate those here. At the click of a button, it'll pull up that information and get those into the model. And like John said, we'll have to take that as a takeaway as how we're getting that into Power BI, or how Power BI might access that information, because we were just given this new feature, so we haven't been able to dig in and play with it to its extent at this point. But we wanted to highlight it today just to let folks know that it's in the works. I guess it's in beta, as you would call it. Like I said, if you guys would like to see a more in-depth demo of like how we did that compare and merge to create those dimensional models and such, please scan the QR code or reach out at the website listed here, and we'd be happy to do a more in-depth demo around something specific to your use case.